Our opening thought this morning comes from the historian Timothy Snyder, and this thought comes from his work on tyranny. Believe in truth. To abandon facts is to abandon freedom. If nothing is true, then no one can criticize power, because there is no basis upon which to do so. If nothing is true, then all is spectacle. The biggest wallet pays for the most blinding lights. Our next reading is also from Timothy Snyder, from his recent book on freedom. And the discourse today is a reflection on the themes of this book on freedom. Snyder writes, "In this book, I aim to define freedom. The task begins with rescuing the word from overuse and abuse. I worry that in my own country, the United States, we speak of freedom without considering what it is. Americans often have in mind the absence of something, occupation, oppression, or even government. An individual is free, we think, when the government is out of the way. Negative freedom is our common sense. To be sure, it is tempting to think of liberty as us against the world, which the notion of negative freedom allows us to do. If the barriers are the only problem, then all must be right with us. That makes us feel good. We think that we would be free if not for a world outside that does us wrong. But is the removal of something in the world really enough to liberate us? Is it not as important, perhaps even more important, to add things? If we want to be free, we will have to affirm, not just deny." Our next reading comes from Timothy Snyder again, from On Freedom. "We enable freedom not by rejecting government, but by affirming freedom as the guide to good government. Reasoning forward from the right definition of freedom, I believe, will get us to the right sort of government." As I begin my reflections this morning on freedom, it might be helpful to address what true and responsible freedom does not entail. What responsible freedom is not. Responsible freedom is not the freedom to harm others. Responsible freedom is not the freedom to discriminate against others in the public sphere. Responsible freedom is not the freedom to dictate the parameters of the health care of others. It's not the freedom to establish prayers of your religion or to restrict the teaching of science in public schools. Responsible freedom is not the freedom to force others to follow the rules of your religion or the freedom to tell other adults whom they can marry. It's not the freedom to restrict the travel of others because they are adherents of a different religion or because they are black or brown. Responsible freedom is not the freedom to kidnap, abduct, and detain international students who are expressing their freedom of speech and their freedom to assemble. Responsible freedom is not the freedom to overturn the outcome of free and fair elections because the winner does not hold your political or religious worldview. Religious freedom and responsible freedom is not the freedom to perpetuate white Christian male privilege and its concomitant economic and political dominance over others. The existentialist philosopher Simone de Beauvoir reminds us something about what responsible freedom is. Responsible freedom entails willing ourselves to be free while also willing others to be free. Responsible freedom is not freedom over others. It is rather freedom with others. And such a true and responsible freedom leads us to be in solidarity with one another and to work for the liberation of others when they are being oppressed by those who are using their freedom in irresponsible ways. True freedom includes not only the freedom from being harmed, it includes the freedom for doing actual good within the community of all life. The well-known historian Timothy Snyder, whose book I've been reading from, 2 books that I've been reading from, and a book that I'm leading a book discussion on for a 7-week period. This historian, Timothy Snyder, shares this view of freedom as being more than just freedom from. In his recent book on freedom, he makes the case that many of us in the United States have focused almost exclusively on a negative form of freedom, freedom from, rather than on positive freedom, freedom for and freedom to. Snyder notes that freedom is not just the absence of evil, but it is also the presence of good. It is freedom for love. It is freedom for compassion. It is freedom for kindness, freedom for justice. The key to responsible freedom is that we use it to bring positive good into the world. Thus, responsible freedom and virtue are intricately linked together. In Snyder's view, when we think of freedom only in the negative sense, as a freedom from, there is more of a tendency to view freedom as a given, rather than something that must be constantly created, something that must be won in each generation for the sake of itself and for future generations. And Snyder warns that, quote, "When you think freedom is given, you have already lost it," end quote. Perhaps this is why the United States is currently losing its freedom so quickly. We overemphasize freedom from rather than freedom for and freedom to, freedom from restrictions, freedom from regulations, freedom from government, and freedom from taxes, rather than freedom for cultivating the well-being and the flourishing of the whole human community, the well-being and the flourishing of the community of all creation, rather than freedom to do all the good we can for all the people we can and for all the sentient beings we can, as long as we ever can. Our overemphasis on negative freedom rather than the positive freedom that Snyder is talking about has led the United States to become less free than we otherwise could be. Even though we celebrate in word and in song that we are, quote, the land of the free, Snyder notes that when it comes to basic civil and political liberties, there are 50 countries in the world that rank higher than the United States. We rank together with South Korea, an ally of ours, and Romania, a country that we usually don't think of as a peer, but that's where we rank in terms of basic civil and political liberties in the world. And when you measure freedom in a more positive sense, as freedom for and freedom to, and include, for example, freedom to have quality and accessible health care, the United States falls even more in the global rankings. In short, our focus on negative freedom, on freedom from rather than freedom for and freedom to, is making us less free. We see this in our precipitous fall in the democracy index over the last decade, and in the fact that we are no longer seen as a full democracy, but as a flawed democracy, with a significant risk of becoming a failed democracy as we move into full-blown autocracy. We also see that this loss of freedom is making us measurably less happy, less healthy, less educated, and more corrupt as a society. Now, when we sing the words, "Land of the Free," it is becoming more and more a memory of what has been lost, or an aspiration for what we may someday become, but less and less a lived reality in the present. To become more free rather than less free, we must embrace a positive view of freedom, and this would have a profound effect on how we govern ourselves and how we see the role of government in our lives. A negative view of freedom fosters a view of government as being a barrier that gets in the way of freedom. Such a view has contributed to an obsession with deregulation that is making us less safe and less healthy and is damaging the well-being of the natural world. Such a view also has led to many to favor cutting government programs so quickly and so deeply that we seem to be willing to cut off our noses to spite our faces. Freedom in the positive sense, however, as freedom for, as freedom to, recognizes a positive role for government when government is actually guided by the principles of positive freedom. And its work is to bring about good, positive good in society. Good government is guided by freedom and is needed to preserve freedom. Government is not the enemy. It's a myth, usually propagated by autocrats and oligarchs, that government is necessarily a barrier to freedom. It is demonstrably the case throughout the world that the most free peoples do not focus on having less government, but rather on having better government for the well-being of all persons. Countries with better governments are not only more free and democratic, they are also happier, healthier, and more educated, more sustainable, and less corrupt than the countries that obsess over making their governments smaller and smaller. I believe that a significant takeaway from Timothy Snyder's insights is that if the United States is to have any chance to move our societal needle towards freedom, more freedom, as opposed to less freedom, we will have to be much more intentional about focusing on not only what we are against, but also on what we are for. For the United States of America to be truly free, we will have to be more than just free from fascism, free from communism. We can't just be against fascism and only against communism. We'll have to be more than just free from autocracy, more than just free from totalitarianism. We must be free from all of those things. But to be truly free and to be responsibly free, to be truly free and responsibly free, we will have to be free for the well-being of each other and be free for the well-being of the community of all creation. And this entails solidarity with the most vulnerable among us and working for their liberation. True and responsible freedom is freedom for just and beloved community. And it's only with this vision and this commitment about what freedom is for that we will be able to have both a good government and a good society. May we all use our freedom responsibly to make the beloved community a reality. And may we always remember that freedom is not only the absence of evil, but the presence of good. True freedom is never simply given. It must constantly and continually be created. It must be constantly won. If we remember this, and if we are brave enough to live into this more fully, then maybe, just maybe, we might have a chance to someday become that to which we aspire, the land of the free. The land of the free. Our parting thought comes from John Lou Johnston. We shall overcome. When we can truly celebrate the diversity of contributions and talents offered by all people, we shall overcome hatred and prejudice and oppression. When we can truly extend our hands to one another in loving acceptance, we shall overcome the past that haunts us now. Living in peace and freedom, we shall overcome the wrongs that have happened and the debts left unpaid. Let us join together in that commitment to overcome.